Being the middle child is like kind of, for lack of better words, like by default you're kind of the forgotten child. Like there's the older kid who's
Right,
like, who's like hitting, but being in a position where you realize you may have to have a difficult conversation with like a client. The funny
Mm.
thing is, I think labels are like limiting in general. Like even I mean you could say as
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us in this week's episode of the podcast. I just wanted to give you a heads up. At the time of recording this week's episode, the internet connection was quite unstable, which has resulted to there being a lag in both the audio and the video version of this week's episode. But this clears beyond the 2-minute mark of the episode. That being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I do hope you enjoy this week's episode. Welcome, everybody. This is AlphaDelta, a podcast where we have conversations with people operating at a higher level than most, with the hopes that it motivates and inspires people to become the best version of themselves. So today, I'm very excited by the guest that I have on this episode. That is Mali. Mali is someone who's doing some really inspiring things in the media entertainment spaces in Atlanta. But Mali, for those who don't know who you are, could you just introduce yourself, let them know who you are, where you're from, what you do, and where you go to school?
my name is Mali Kaluve. I think the title of like what exactly I do a lot of things, but currently I say like the current role that I'm really focusing on right now is being the CEO of media here in Georgia. We're based out of Savannah and Atlanta, and I am the CEO and production for the company. In terms of where I went to school, so I went in Brookhouse in Nairobi. Also, I grew up and I'm from Kenya. Nairobi specifically is where I spent the majority of my childhood. And then in terms of like, high school education, but I currently go to Savannah College of Art and Design. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for the introduction. So yes, my first question that I have for you is, what are you passionate about and why?
So that's what I'm passionate about is the ability to like storytell. I think storytelling to me has just been like fascinating, and like the multitude of like I'd say maybe non-traditional ways of telling stories, which kind of led me into the world of like photography and film, and just like media at large. Even now social media and it's like storytelling capabilities, and I think I just fell in love about how like an image or a video could be just so powerful, especially being younger, and films, videos, pictures. That was kind of like my form of escapism, and also
Mm.
the best way I could like identify my emotions. Like I found myself identifying how I feel as a person or how I perceive certain emotions based on actually like movie characters or like images. So I guess that's where that passion has pretty much come from.
Interesting. So it really just came from a lot of the
Yeah.
stuff you're exposed to, things you used to watch, like your favorite superhero or characters, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, it's just like it was just interesting. Like I just found a lot of my like identity and like self, or like just kind of recognizing even similarities from like different
Right.
things I was seeing. Like, so I just found that like super like just fascinating and intriguing.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
That's nice. That's nice. All right. So actually just wanting to dive deeper on that specific topic, right? That is a bit about your childhood, right? Just taking a step
Mhm.
back, could you just tell us a bit about what your childhood was like? What was younger Mali like? What were they into? Just sort of just give us that whole background.
I mean, I was born in like Nairobi, Kenya, spent some time actually in Uganda briefly while my dad was working there. Yeah, I'm from like, we're three kids in the house, like older brother, younger sister, so I'm the middle child. And I think a lot of that had was like the basis of how I conducted my childhood. Being the middle child is like kind of, for lack of better words, like by default, you're kind of the forgotten child. Like there's the older kid who's
Right.
like, who's like hitting these like significant life marks, and then I have a younger sister who's the baby of the family. So like I was
Right.
just there, which kind
Right in
of
the
left
middle.
me a
Yeah.
lot right in the middle. So I had like a
Yeah.
lot of time to myself,
Mm-hmm.
spent a lot of time like in my head and like just very dreamlandy and all that stuff. And I just got curious about like everything. So if you name like possibly like one career at one point in my life, I probably had a like significant like interest in doing it. Like I want to be a psychiatrist at one point, like
Right.
a
Interesting.
mechanical engineer.
Mm-hmm.
And all these I was like learning that I wanted to do them based on like hands-on random experiences, like just doing different things and being like, wow, I kind of like this. So it made me like super curious. Um
Right.
and then I would say like my curiosity was also interestingly enough like came about during a time when my dad actually had a stroke and had to actually
Sorry
retire
to hear
from
that.
like his job.
Right.
And that breeded this it breeded this like a desire in my brain being younger to kind of just like be like, what can I do as like a
Right.
almost like 10, 12, 13-year old, what can I do to
Mm.
like help out my family? So
Right.
I love my I just say like I spent a lot of time like exploring and like being in my own little dreamland a lot of my childhood and kind of probably thinking like way beyond when I really did need to
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah.
Would you say that experience that you had, did it like force you to sort of grow up a lot faster than you needed to, or?
Yeah, I truly believe it did because at that point my dad was the sole like breadwinner.
Mhm.
My mom had like her own smaller business ventures, but majority of her time was spent taking care of like me and my siblings. So and I have a younger sister, and at that point I think she was almost like 3 years old or something of this sort.
Right.
And I have an older brother too who's like probably 2, 3 years off from like going to like, college or uni. So I'm
Yeah.
just there like, okay, like what can I do as well? And like,
Right.
is there something I could do? Because I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like, what, 10 to that span of like 10 to 13, I spent a lot of time just being like, I have like 5 years or something until I'm out of
Mm.
here. Like, is there
Yeah.
nothing I could do?
Right, right.
So it kind of like pushed me to really like kind of like grow up and also assume within myself different responsibilities to see like what impact I could make in that position.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
That's cool. Nice, nice. So all right, my next question for you is, can you walk us through to how you got to where you are today? You sort of highlighted it at the beginning in terms of your childhood, but like, take us through now post education to I guess the position you're in right now. Just walk us through that whole entire journey. Just tell us about like that career path.
So funny enough, I'd probably say like my career path kind of started when I was like 13. Um, so I
Okay.
remember when I was 13, I decided I wanted to get into music as some talk like I didn't know if I want to be like an artist. I didn't know what role I
Right.
wanted to assume,
Yeah.
but I told myself I had to do something. And like I found
Right.
this little app, website. I started using this website, was free. At that point, it was like
Mhm.
linked to some like open label, which was kind of like a label that like you kind of can just join. Like they
Okay.
kind of just
Okay.
like have unlimited, they have like unlimited contracts and like pretty much everybody's signed, they'll
Mhm.
distribute your music for you, like
Oh,
as long as
interesting.
you're on this platform. So I
Yeah.
put a like I made like a beat. There's this Irish rapper that liked the beat that I put together,
Hmm.
and this dude is probably like 23, 4. So I'm like, wow, this 24-year-old loves my beat. Like they love
Yeah,
my
yeah,
beat.
yeah,
So I sent over the beat, he made a track to it, and like we put it and at like I was like 13 and I was like, wow. Add producer credits for like a somewhat established like artist
yeah.
in like
Nice.
in Ireland that has a tad bit of following or something like that. And like I just did
Yeah,
that, and that was kind of like what pushed me to just like that was my point where I was just like, let me see what more I could do, like how far can I like
right.
really like reach. So I guess
Hmm.
going from there, it was just a lot of like getting into creative. Like I was already kind of creative, but like getting into like painting, drawing, sketching, anything like that could work out pretty well. In fact, I even started taking like art. I took art classes all the way to like my A level. I was actually like an A level art student,
Interesting.
and
Yeah.
especially during my A level art is when I really started to enjoy photography and like visual content, just like visual art that was created through like digital mediums and stuff like that. That kind of like started to, I grew a big interest in that. And from
Mhm.
there I was kind of looking at like what else is kind of is related to that, like what other things shape that world. And right when I was finishing high school, I think my parents at that point were going through, you know, some financial issues, and I was like, wow, I don't know if we're going to be able to first go through go through college, start college, you know, in
Right.
September, just
Yeah.
because like, you know, there's a lot with 3 kids. My brother was actually, I think, still in college at the time, or abroad
Right.
too.
Hmm.
So we're kind of there like, oh, okay, I'm there like, okay, I don't know if this is gonna happen, so like, does this mean that I have to like stop pursuing what I am
Yeah.
enjoying
Yeah.
or not? Because like it's like, okay, a year off, like what am I gonna do? And at that point I was like, you know what, we're gonna throw out any idea of like, stop thinking about what couldn't happen, and just thinking about like today, here and now, what can I do? And I I think also like right then, actually during that time, COVID had happened and I was at home and I was like, okay, what can I do? Started a podcast, recording myself. That was getting into like a lot more audio production and everything. And then I had to
Hmm.
market this podcast. I started doing like online courses in social media management. I already was still doing my photography, taking pictures of myself, trying to grow that following, trying to kind of, you know, first build my portfolio because it's something I enjoy doing, and it's COVID too, so there's nobody else to really take pictures of but
Yeah. But
but
yourself,
myself.
right? Right.
And yeah, and my parents are not gonna just be plastered on social media, like, you know, like older gens, like, you
Exactly.
know, it's like, don't just put me out there or whatever. So
Literally,
I
yeah.
just did that. I did that, and then I took it a step further and I was like, let me even like apply for like some different like jobs and roles and things like this. And actually, I think actually before COVID though is when I actually, I think, started applying for some of these job roles and everything.
Okay. Interesting.
Um,
Yeah.
or slightly leading up to like a bit of the opening up. And I ended up getting yeah, just before COVID, I ended up getting like a role at NRG radio. I think I'm getting all this
Mm.
right. I don't know.
Okay.
Is it was it before or after? I just think like sometimes I think
Right.
about the story. I was like, it might have been after, like when COVID
Right.
like eased up, like opened up a lot more.
Okay.
But it's a little bit more. But yeah, I got the role as social media manager. I'm stood in this room with like a bunch of people who, like, some of them have like masters in CAD, I guess, you know,
Right. And how old are you at this
whatever
time?
the
Like,
case.
I'm assuming
I was
probably
like
like what, seven?
19.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
19 when I applied
yeah.
for the role at NRG Radio. I got the role as a social media manager, and
Wow.
within maybe a month or two being there, I ended up becoming like a photographer and also like, you know, video production, like you know, specialist or lead like at the company as well, doing a lot of like events and stuff like that. And then
Right.
2, 3, 4 months after that, like I ended up being a radio personality at the same station.
Oh
And
wow. Damn.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
and then from there I almost, I will say, I had to sit down and think to myself, now that like, okay, my parents tell me they're in a position that we can, you know, school can, I can go to college, which I kind of forgot about. I was kind of like okay with the reality that this might not
Yeah,
happen, like college might
yeah,
not happen.
yeah. Because I
And
mean,
they
things
brought
were
it up
going
and I was
quite
like,
well for you, right? Like
yeah,
at
I was like,
NRG.
listen,
Yeah,
exactly. So I was like,
exactly.
is it really necessary? But I was like, you know what? I think in regards to some of the things I'm passionate about, there's so much more I can learn.
Right.
And it may shorten or like help with the learning curve, being in a scenario that I can like kind of like have access to a bit more information and like a lot
Mhm.
more different, like, you know, different people. So that was kind of my decision to be like, okay, I'm gonna go to film school at Savannah College of Art and Design here in Georgia.
Right.
And during that time I'd still been doing like, of course, like because I'd worked with, you know, energy and I was still doing freelance work, I decided to like kind of find a way to continue thinking on how should I go about building something for myself, or kind of going in now to entrepreneurship instead of just
Yeah,
being a freelancer. Why not put something together that's like bigger than me,
exactly.
something. And one of my greatest, like my biggest mindsets, because of I guess my dad and having his stroke, and like how it impacted his career. I learned from him, because it's what he did to like, he had already been doing things he put things together in the event that like if anything ever happens to like his job role or whatever, like financially, for like almost 10 years we were still being sustained by like things he had put together, like
Right.
10 years prior, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
So that kind of made me be like, okay, freelancing, that's not really sustainable, because like once
Mhm.
I stop, it all stops. Like if I
Exactly.
have
Yep.
to step back, it steps back, like like
Yeah.
you're the everything. Like you can
100%.
literally just have one sick day, and like that's pivotal
Yeah.
when you're freelancing. So during that point, I ended up being able to like get also the proper like work authorization like I needed to also like work in the state and start a
Right.
corporation in the US,
Mhm.
um or like be able to work in a company. And I found somebody who want to partner with me in like building something, and eventually put together like Vinteve Media. And I
Amazing.
kind of took everything I've kind of observed being in like the entertainment world and like a lot of music world and everything, just different things I've learned from just like moving around, networking, being in like just get myself into all kinds of rooms.
Right.
And yeah, now we're currently working on Vinteve Media and growing as a creative agency, heavily still into like video production. And also
Mhm.
like during the time I've been here, also due to school and all this other stuff, like I took a break from school just to kind of like grow this a little bit more and
Yeah.
put myself in a position where like because school's expensive.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh
and
yeah.
like I'm not gonna lie,
100%.
I'm a scholarship student, but like it's still expensive.
I
Like,
know, and you're in an
you
art
know,
school too, because like I know, because so
yeah.
I studied in New York, right? And like yeah, that's on scholarships, and still it's like yeah, but like
It's still and
yeah.
uh,
Yeah, sorry, I was saying, but like, because initially I actually did want to, I wanted to study design. I wanted to go
mm-hmm.
to and actually I got into SCAD, but the fees,
Okay.
I was like, yeah, this is not, yeah, this is not feasible. Sorry, this is not gonna happen. So I was like, okay, you know what? Let me just find something else and figure it out and just, move from there. But yeah, yeah, I get it.
Yeah,
I get
so like all of that is just like it pretty much just put me in the mindset of like, okay, now let me try to figure out a situation where I could, and as ambitious as it sounds, build something that is like bigger than me,
Yeah.
self-sustaining, and
Hmm.
actually use that to facilitate like my education while I still like look into like other, like grow. Like I don't think the two can't simultaneously happen.
Yeah.
I think if I think of a lot of big like innovators, people who've made large moves, it was never just like, let me just be in school and not think about anything past school and then like start something for myself. Like
Yeah.
a lot of those companies were built during that situation. Like a lot of them like were birthed during that whole point. And whether it's that they pursued school and finished school and like went along to continue building it, or whether it's for some people, they just realize that they've gotten what they may have needed,
Hmm.
and continued on like innovating and growing that. Like I think sometimes like the structure the world kind of places on how we should go about like career building or education in general, I don't think it has to be like step one and then two.
Exactly.
Sometimes it's like step two and three kind of happen at the same time,
At the
like
same
start
time,
thinking
yeah.
bigger. And like yeah, so that's just kind of like where I am now and how I've gotten to the point I'm at now.
Nice, nice. So one of the things a couple of things I'm picking up from like just the career story is like, I'm picking up a lot
Mm-hmm.
of traits of like, for you, a lot of proactivity, right? Like you were never just like the
Mm-hmm.
kind of person to just sit around and be like, sort of wait for things to come to you. It's more like you're very much go-getter, very much like driven. and picking up a lot of like ambition, a lot of like, passion and belief in yourself, for a lot of the things you're sharing. And I think your story in itself can actually like, something I want you to speak a bit about is like, for anyone, out there who might be getting started or thinking about starting on something, right? What sort of like advice would you give, like based on your own personal experience, having gone, for example, at 19 working at NRG, right? Like I don't think there's a lot of 19-year-olds who do stuff like that, or right now, running your own like media agency. You know, if you had to give advice to someone who's like getting started about thinking about whether it's doing something similar or just like, in general, like what advice would you give them?
I think like my biggest like piece of advice that I give anybody is just like have audacity. Like just have all the audacity that you could foster up. Like find it and just like put it in yourself. Because like that's pretty much like what it was. Like I wasn't, for example, that job posting, you're talking about you prefer a bachelor's degree. I actually believe that I have the skill sets like that are like needed,
Mm,
if you know what I'm saying, like to
yeah,
to come in and do what needs to be done. Like sometimes you kind of let like the status quo dictate what you can and can't do, because like either you don't see many people doing that, or like they say that they don't do that. Like just always be willing to like challenge, but at the same time also always be willing to like learn and grow, because that audacity only came from the fact that like even if I did know what they were asking me to do when it started, which sometimes has happened with like some of the
yeah,
things I've gotten myself into, I have practiced like my ability to like sit down and teach myself, or like learn from somebody, or like sit down and take in the information I needed to be able to do so. So it's like it's not that I just have a confidence in what I could do. I have confidence in what I can learn. And like that just put together just kind of gives that audacity that I think is like, if you, whatever it is you want to do, if you just have that audacity and you're
right.
willing to learn, you're teachable. I don't
Mm-hmm.
see like why there should be any like limit.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think those two things, especially the audacity piece, I feel like a lot of people, they tend to like sort of disqualify themselves or self-sabotage
Mm-hmm.
in a sense, just because it's like they don't have that belief, or they don't think that, um, you know, the opportunity to come to them, when in reality is like if they just tried, it could be a yes. And if it is, that's great. If it's a no, okay, cool. Like just look for the next opportunity that's for you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So the next question I have for you is, what has been one pivotal moment in your life that has shaped your career?
Ooh, that's a tricky one. I don't know. I think a pivotal point was kind of realizing that I was already like ambitious and stuff like that, but like I was also sometimes like not fully committed to certain concepts, ideas, or like
Mm,
things that I had in mind. So I think the pivotal moment was sitting down, reflecting, and realizing within myself that like I don't have a blanket. Like I don't have necessarily like us, I don't have somewhere that something I could just like fall back on. I don't have that. And that moment of like that pivotal moment is that I told myself and I realized it in myself. It's not that I don't have that I'm gonna be motivated. I'm gonna be motivated because I don't need that. That was the moment that I really started to like believe that, listen, I could do it. Like there's no reason I haven't. And I sat back and I thought about like everything I've been able to do and like kind of accomplish, or the things that have happened up until now, and be like, whoa, like this is something I could really do if I just like commit to it and go through with it, and forget the blanket, forget trying to figure out a plan B, like just kind of go full board on plan A and make it work. Because like it's like for me, it was like I felt like I'm already at like ground zero. So
yeah.
like this back thing I'm looking for, I'm already
Yeah,
there. Like I'm kind of already
exactly.
there.
It's
So
only up. There's only going up from here.
it's
It's
only
like,
up, like it's
yeah.
only up. And realizing that, and that I think that was just like a key moment.
Yeah, yeah, nice. I like that. I really, really like that. All right. So the next question that I have for you is, what is like the biggest challenge you ever faced in your life, and how did you overcome it?
The biggest challenge. I think one of the biggest like challenges, I would say I think that's an interesting one, the more I think about the question.
Yeah,
But I think the
it can be
biggest challenge I
personal,
like
professional, whatever you feel. Yeah.
I think they kind of like work. I think they both it helped in both ways, but was so I kind of felt dealt with like a lot of loss growing up, whether it was like like I think the first time I experienced like the loss of even somebody I knew, like a friend of mine, like somebody I grew up with, was at like 13, and that was
Oh,
kind
I'm
of
sorry
like
to hear that.
crazy to me. And
Mm.
all the way up until like probably the last significant loss I faced was my mom's like younger brother passing away, who were very close because like we're not that far off age difference. So like our age gap is almost like what, like me and like my younger sisters. But what all that taught me was like the fluidity of life, like how fast things can like change. Like you're not like sitting on like a flat concrete ground. Like you're kind of like you're like in water. Like it
Yeah,
sways, like it's constantly
yeah,
swaying, like kind of anything can happen.
sure.
And learning how to like process that and deal with like just the ability that things can change drastically, both professionally, emotionally, like what's going on in life, and understanding how there's like the perfect balance isn't necessarily being still. It's kind of like learning how to like move with that flow, whether it's like processing emotions, processing different losses, like all that
Mhm.
kind of just kind gave me actually being able to be more flexible with that movement gave me more of a focused mind and like a still mind in regards to just how to deal with like changing situations. Like okay, losing maybe your first customer, like executing like your first bad project, like sometimes you think things
Yeah,
just go smoothly, but like all these different challenges also professionally, just learning how to like not fixate, not let those
sure.
isolated situations bring me down, but how to like flow with them, go through whatever emotions I need to go through, and
Yeah,
like just kind of like keep going. That's probably one of the hardest things like I've had to learn, but like I just think it's been like a beautiful challenge to even still now, like I'm still like working
yeah,
on like that challenge, but I'd say that's probably one of the biggest challenges.
yeah, yeah. No, that's actually something I can like really resonate with a lot, especially when it comes to like dealing with loss of family. Because like just
Mm-hmm.
like you, very similarly, like I lost, like for example, like my first experience with loss was the loss of my dad at 10, right? So you
Mm-hmm.
can imagine like that was probably the most like the greatest loss that one could experience at such a young age, and
Mm-hmm.
it really brings things into perspective. I like how you talked about how it just shows you how fluid life is, and how also
Mm-hmm.
like it's very finite, right? It's like you at a young age you think like things are always going to be there, things are always, like it's always going to be
True.
good, and then like when things just you lose things and things don't go the way you want to go, it just sort of brings a level of appreciation and also a level of humility when it comes to a lot of things that you do, like the people you're with, the experiences you have.
Mm-hmm.
So I can really resonate with that, the last thing, a lot. And I think because of it, it's like the person I am today, like it was like one of those very defining moments, right? I don't think I'll be the same person I am today if it wasn't for not only just that experience of loss, but all the many other experiences that have happened over the years as well.
Definitely.
The next question I have for you, it's actually kind of similar to the conversation we're having around like advice and getting started. But I'm just going to ask you the question again in case you might have something else that you want to add. So the question is, what advice would you give someone who's trying to do the same things as you?
I think I definitely say apart from, like I was saying earlier, audacity is I guess learning how to like live in the experience, like learning how to actually enjoy the journey to where it is you're trying to go. I think sometimes one of the parts where it gets like depressing sometimes doing like, you know, the whole entrepreneurship journey, like when you're
Yeah.
thinking about the goal constantly, because like you kind of need to of course think about where you're trying to go, but we focus sometimes so hard on where we're trying to go that we forget that there's this whole experience and journey that we're missing out on. And you know, I think that's something I learned, actually I think it was like from a video just talking about how how much we actually remain in the statistically how much we actually remain in the moment, and the number was like severely alarming. Like we
Yeah.
miss out or we forget or we don't experience almost like half of the experiences that we go through because we're not presently there, we're somewhere else. And I think it's just beautiful and rewarding when you stay in the moment, because sometimes you can hit certain goals and be like, I wish I enjoyed it more. I wish I actually
Yeah.
experienced it more rather than
Yeah.
fixating on where I was trying to get. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's very interesting you brought it up. But like I remember hearing an interview for like Conor
Mm-hmm.
McGregor. I think it's when he was going for I think the his second time winning like the his class championship or something, right? So he was going against
Mm-hmm.
a competitor again. The question he was asked is like, Conor McGregor, what are you gonna do differently this time? Because he had won the previous one, right? And he basically said, like, I'm just gonna enjoy the moment. I'm just gonna like savor in every single thing. So, just very much relating to like what you're saying. It's like,
Yeah.
I think a lot of us were always so caught up in like chasing the next goal, the next, accomplishment that we just don't appreciate
Yeah.
just the day to day and just the journey of it all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I think it's just beautiful. I think when you sit down, and I would say a huge book to read to if you want to like kind of also dive deep into that is The Power of Now. That was also a
Mm,
huge turning point. That was a big turning point book for me. Like I read that book and
interesting.
it sounds corny,
Yeah.
but like my mindset just totally shifted.
Shifted.
And
Yeah.
it's all about learning how to remain in the present. Like literally just about just look at
Yeah.
now and enjoy it. Like what's
And
happening
enjoy
now?
it.
Like just be here a little bit more, and you realize like first how much there is to be like grateful for. Second, like actually congratulating yourself and like, you know, giving yourself the flowers for what you've achieved up until this point. Now, I'm not saying settle, like you don't have to settle for where you are now,
Mm,
but it's like you can still appreciate where you are now while
yeah.
still doing your best to like move forward. Both can be true at the same time. It
At the
doesn't
same
have to be
time.
like complacency. Yeah, it could just be you just it's just recognition and as you
Yeah.
proceed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree. And I think that's essentially what like helps people, I guess, live more fulfilled lives, because you
True.
always hear the situation where like people they chase, they accomplish all these great things, but they're just not happy. Because it's like,
Mm-hmm.
they spend years in pursuit of something and saw their life go by, but they didn't really take the time to, I guess, quote unquote, smell the roses, along the way, right?
100%.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a really good. The Power of Now is definitely on my list of reading. So I'm glad you actually brought it up because now I'm like, all right, this is something I should, pay close attention to now.
Definitely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. Awesome. So the next question I have for you is where are you heading to? What are some of the things you're hoping to accomplish in the next couple of years?
I definitely think over the next couple of years, I believe that growing Vinteve, first of all, is a huge number one for me. Not only growing it here, but actually what I'm enjoying about being here is the ability to test, try, and experiment
Mhm.
with a lot of different things, because the vision is to bring Vinteve and open Vinteve also in Kenya and like East Africa,
Nice.
utilizing like some of, I guess, first of the resources, and like there's already this culture of like it's kind of crazy. Like in one city, the amount of production companies I've seen are insane.
Really?
And
Yeah.
like some of the things they're doing and like how much they're pumping into like media campaigns here, like
Mm,
just to see also what other production companies are even doing. It's crazy. Like it's a
yeah.
different ball game. But I still truly believe that like it hasn't seen its full potential until like it's fully like not fully but like more also established. If people would see what I think people across Africa could do
That's
with
true.
like big, well-funded
Yeah.
media projects, campaigns, films, TV. Like if just more of the opportunity was there. I don't think the talent is lacking. I just think some of the times it's the opportunity, the funding, and so much more. But if that was, I think people would be just like absolutely mind blown. So I think over the like next couple of years, it's kind of just seeing how like I can play a role in like that, and also just giving more creatives opportunities to work to you know be in like a company that also considers the creative and more so like what their process is, not just the client but the creative and talent themselves, ensuring that they're also empowered in the process is kind of like one of the big moves for me and also Vinteve Media over the next couple of years.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. So what I'm hearing from you is just, a lot of obviously growing the company, and sort of I'm hearing like expanding, internationally, right? You just talked about in Africa
Yeah.
and Kenya, and giving a lot of opportunities to different creatives. Um, yeah, I really like, or I resonate with what you're saying about how, a lot of, the one of the biggest issues, especially for a lot of creatives, like here in Kenya, as an example, is just it's a lack of resources, right? It's not really an issue of creativity, because what you've realized is even like some of the work that's put out with the like, very limited resources, you're just like, what? So you can imagine,
100%.
yeah. So you can imagine if you, invest in this creative, you give them, whether it's like, experience, the skills or equipment, monetary, just basically give them the tools they need to turn whatever vision that they have for their whatever creation they have for the creations, right, into reality. Then I mean, the quality of work will just like, you know, yeah, just really raise the standards a lot.
100%. Definitely.
Yeah. Awesome. Right. So the next set of questions are a bit more personal. And the first question I have for you is, do you practice self-improvement? And if so, what do you do?
Oh yeah, for me, self-improvement is pretty much like an everyday practice of mine. And also like a every moment practice. One of the things I tend to do is, so I was watching like a lot of like New Amsterdam. It's like a doctor show. Not a lot of it. I think I just watched the whole like all seasons in a very short period of time. I'm not gonna say how short, but like a very short period of time. And one of the things that like fascinated me, and I didn't really know, and I also get that this is like a TV series and it's not 100% accurate depiction of what really goes on. But one of the most fascinating concepts was like after surgeries, like a failed surgery, for example, or something that didn't go right, they come together and they don't like accuse or like you're a bad doctor. I mean, some of it, is, but ideally, the idea or concept behind it is not to like accuse or be like somebody's a bad doctor, this, that, or the other, but is to evaluate and see where did we go wrong or where did we go right? How can we do something better? Could we have done something better? And like if it's really going in and evaluating, and that's how I practice treating like different scenarios or situations, also good or bad, just because you also want to evaluate the good so you know what to pick and carry forward. So if let's say I had a project or a conversation, for example, let's say I had a conversation with somebody and I felt like there was failed communication on my part, or something went wrong with the conversation, or things went bad, I sit down and evaluate what did I do? How did I communicate? How, me as a person, like how did I think during that situation? All these different things. Could I have done something better? Also allowing myself the grace of, hey, you did the best that you could. Like that is still also a possibility and stuff like that. And kind of evaluating and moving forward. Apart from that, just like a lot of reading. Like and I will say I've not been the greatest about reading recently, but just consuming a lot of information and like learning And I think like what I used to do a lot more before, and I also want to get back into doing a lot more of, is just like spending time to yourself. That's not just that you're by yourself, but you're intentionally like putting yourself away from the noise of social media and like all these different things, and just like sitting and being with yourself and being present. Even if you're not really thinking, like, I'm not saying you have to like meditate on a specific thing, but just even just taking that time to just be silent with yourself and just like empty your mind. I think that's also like something that I do for self improvement when I can to help me. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I always think like meditation is, or just like that self-reflection. Um, it's
Mm-hmm.
something that's so, when you do it, it feels like a chore. It feels like you're torturing yourself. But the
True.
long-term benefits of it, right? They,
Mm-hmm.
supersede whatever pain you're going through. So it's like you're going through a short-term pain, but you're having like a very long-term gain in terms of like, just your ability to be very present, your ability to be very calm, and also develop a higher level of self-awareness in you, right? Because it's that
Yeah.
that idea where you're able to like recognize, your thoughts, or just be very comfortable with yourself and just being alone,
Mm-hmm.
right? So yeah, I think it's those things are like really, really important as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So, right. So the next question I have for you is, what is one area of your life you feel you could improve on?
Ooh, I'd say communication.
Mm,
Um, yeah, communication. And I'd say more so like uncomfortable communication. When it's great
okay.
things to say, it's fun to say it. Like who doesn't love saying the good stuff?
Yeah.
But just being able to like communicate things that may be like challenging or like difficult, or like do I have to say that
Yeah.
today? I think that's something like I can definitely work on. Um, and also I think just like showing myself more grace. I still think I need like a lot more work to like just give myself more grace and congratulate myself a little bit more. I think those are some things can
Yeah. Yeah. Those are,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, those are definitely things that I personally as well have had my fair share of struggles with, right? Especially
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to those difficult conversations, right? If someone's done you wrong, or like they've upset you, and you to have that like one-to-one conversation to sort of straighten things out. And I'm sure even in your case, right, like running a business, like, if you have to tell an employer like, hey, if you don't pull up your socks, like things are not looking good for you. Those crucial conversations are very key. But I actually heard this quote from it's called Alex Hormozy. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but he basically said that like the life you want, or like the thing you want, is like one it's like one crucial conversation away. So one difficult conversation away, right? So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
you have like all these difficult conversations that you've been sort of procrastinating. They're limiting you from getting the desired outcome that you want. So you just need to like bite
Yep.
the bullet and have that conversation, rather than like, keep on just stalling and stalling and not really making any progress at all.
100%. And for me, one of the challenging ones is not even like working with people or like employees. I think also because like I was like a prefect in school and all that stuff. Like if you're talking
Yeah.
about like internal hierarchy, that may not be as difficult.
Mm-hmm.
But being in a position where you realize you may have to have a difficult conversation with like a client,
Mm.
yeah, that one that one is a bit tricky because it's like it's a
Yeah,
delicate conversation,
it's
but
true.
like you still also as like a like entrepreneur, you still have to set boundaries as well. Like what I'm saying, like
Exactly.
it's not as much as yes, a customer is important. Sometimes a customer can do something that is may put your business at risk, or like may
Yes, yeah.
jeopardize your like there's different things that could happen, and having those difficult conversations, it could be a tough one
Yeah,
because you're like,
yeah. Hmm.
yeah, but yeah,
Yeah.
no, yeah, still, and also in personal life, I think for me also in like my personal life, like there's things I'm great at
Yeah,
in my
yeah,
professional life, but my
yeah.
personal life, you'd think I was like sometimes like a whole different person. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, just
definitely.
kind of learning. Yeah, that I think that's a big one,
The balance,
definitely.
yeah. I'm actually curious about, when you're having those difficult conversations with clients, right? From like a tactical perspective, like how do you approach the conversations? What is, can you give me an idea, a rough idea of what that looks like usually for you?
So, like for me, it's like one of them, it's like being firm. Like
Mhm.
you still have to be firm with where you stand as like a company. Like think about it, like at the end of the day, like doing business even with a customer, especially I will say sometimes doing like B2B business as especially
Mhm.
like it's a negotiation. Like
Exactly.
it's like especially
Mhm.
sometimes when you're especially in the creative business too, because I think the guys on like what to do and what not to do when dealing with like an artist's work or creative material, I don't think it's been educated to a lot of people as much. So you may go into a situation and let's say there's a picture you've taken for a client, and like even though like it may say, let's say in like a contract somewhere, is it just been mentioned, you're like, okay, you're not supposed to like alter this piece of work. Like how I
Mhm.
present it
How it
is
should
how
be.
it should be, you know what I'm saying? Like
Right. Yeah.
if you want any revisions, we can make the revisions, but like let's not alter this.
Yeah. Yeah.
you know
Definitely.
because at the
Yeah.
end of the day it may, in certain situations, because it may,
Jeopardize the brand.
if I put that in my
Mhm.
portfolio and this is my client and stuff like that, it may hurt our
Yeah.
brand, because
Exactly.
like what you have done is now going to be a representation of our quality and our eye and like our, in certain situations. So it's like having a conversation like that where you're sticking up, because like I'm an artist. So for me, it's
Yeah.
like, especially being the person, like, being in leadership, I'm
Hmm.
gonna stick up for the artist. Like regardless of what it is, like I want to make sure that, be it me or anybody else who like shoots under Vinteve or anything like that, I still want to make sure that they're getting the proper representation. There are times where like attribution hasn't been done, because attribution is like a key thing for
Hmm.
especially some of like the services, unless otherwise agreed. Like attribution is one of the things where it's like, please attribute whoever give them
Exactly.
their
Yeah.
credit
Give
due
credits.
and stuff.
Exactly.
Like
Yeah.
give credit where credit is due. And I'm not saying you have to do it
Right.
every single time, but like if you're a brand and you have the opportunity to like highlight an artist, like I don't think it harms you. I don't
Right.
think it hurts you to just say this person did it, you know
Exactly.
so
Yeah.
or especially being like a smaller company coming up, like usage rights, and it's like somebody's posted your work or used your work in a way that was not agreed upon,
Hmm.
especially dealing with like smaller businesses and stuff like that, because like bigger corporations they may not always,
Yeah.
not even
Yeah.
like sometimes remotely, they may
Yeah.
think about the repercussions of like taking a work that was just for social media and putting it out there, because like they know the legal ramifications, and a lot of the
Exactly.
time the people they're working with are equipped to actually go and be like, hey,
Yeah.
don't do that
Exactly.
to like our creative or
Right.
our work.
And take the
um
actions. Mhm.
so kind of learning to do that, because those difficult conversations, especially being in a position where like I don't want to build something that like as a creative that is not putting the creative in mind, and give them the respect that they do, because as much as like there's, yes, a huge, like a larger need or larger market for creative content, I don't think the treatment of artists and creatives in general has necessarily like improved the way it should, with how
Mhm.
much like they're we're being required to like put out there, and how much you're like building, driving, and like growing different like
Right.
brands and opportunity. I think just like more respect is kind of deserved. um and I just think it's like it's a responsibility to do it. So as long as you're being firm, and I won't go in a reactive way. I'll also
Mhm.
educate the client, especially because I will say, I'm dealing with smaller brands. And so if I can like
Right.
educate a smaller business owner who may over the next years be your bigger corporation, or somebody who may be doing marketing in like a solid, like you just never know how much you can like impact. So if I can sit down and talk to that person and educate them on why you don't do certain things or how you should treat your creatives like during creative projects, I think even if it may not help me immediately in that moment that I've done it, because whatever has happened may have happened, I can make sure that they have a different mindset and treatment towards other people. Because like, so I've realized it's a lot more difficult for um sometimes artists to like stick up for themselves,
Right.
especially when there's like a monetary exchange
Yeah.
that's been put. Like you kind of feel
Hmm.
like you have to take it. Like you're just
Literally,
like,
yeah.
oh, but
Yeah.
they paid me, so
Exactly,
let me
yeah.
just I
Let's
don't know
slip it under the rug,
to
just like sort of let it go.
uh,
Yeah, I get you. I get you,
oh, I
yeah.
told them not to do that and they said it's fine, they won't do it, but I'll just let them, yeah, so yeah, that
Yeah,
happens. So it's a tough
yeah,
one, but it's necessary, yeah.
necessary indeed. Yeah, definitely. I agree. I agree. All right, so switching back to a bit like the more personal questions.
Mm-hmm.
The next question I have for you is, what does being non-binary mean to you?
Wow, for me, I don't know, it's kind of like a tough one to describe,
Mm,
especially because it's like more, it's like it's a feeling. I just don't think like I think just in nature I'm like a complex individual, and I think the funny
mm,
thing is I think labels are like limiting in general.
mm,
Like even I mean you could say as well like having the label non-binary as well for me sometimes even feels limiting, because there's
limiting
still like the
itself.
societal perception, there's still a societal perception that's being created of what that may look like or feel like or whatever. But it's just like, again, like I just feel like I'm a very like fluid in nature person, and I just don't feel like I should be in the bounds, or I am in the bounds. If it was just, I think even before I could conceptualize or think about what any of this even meant, like since I
Right.
was like very young, like it's
Yeah.
just been how I guess I've moved through life before I could even perceive what was anything that was going around, like
Mm,
in this way. So I'd say it's just like it's about like just like my freedom of expression, my freedom of self, and like my fluidity is what that means to me. Yeah.
yeah. So actually, like, just building up on that, what you're speaking about how,
Mm-hmm.
you, for the longest time, you've always felt very fluid, how has that, affected the way you navigate life and the way you experience things in life?
I think it's like changed how like I wouldn't say change, but like it's the experience that I've had, like just from being younger up until now. You could say I've placed myself in almost like this like ostracized box, or I ended up in this like little ostracized box of like society, where it's like like I walk into a room and I understand that I may make people uncomfortable. So I think it complemented like my audacity or like my just like drive, because I'm like, anything somebody could possibly say or like have a problem with is probably something like involved with just like how I conduct my life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
instead of like sitting down and like letting it bite at me, instead of like waiting to be like welcomed to like rooms, instead of being like, waiting for people to like recognize me necessarily, I'm like, why do I not just go out there and make room for
Exactly.
myself?
For
Like,
yourself.
why don't I just go out there and do what has to be done? Not just for myself, but like anybody else who may feel the same way that like I do. It's just like, let me just go out there and like be outrageous. I also have
I
this
love that.
slight sense of like, let me bother people. If they're bothered, that's fine.
Like it's
You
their
know,
problem,
so
right?
like, the the best thing sometimes you could do to somebody is just like win. That's all you have
That
to
is
do.
so true. That
Like
is
sicken them just to see you win. And like all you have to do is
exactly.
just do you and win. Like just do
Yeah,
what you want to do and like
yeah.
go and like be you as bad as you want to be you. Not driven by anything else but what you desire. And
Mhm.
while you're not even focused on what everybody else is doing or saying or like going about stuff, you've already just given somebody like the biggest like slap in the face, which is like your words, your ideas, they don't hold power over me. So it's kind of like just, yeah, allow myself to like just free myself from like what other people perceived. And like that has been like one of the biggest things to like navigate or like move through life, just kind of being like, you know, like I just
Yeah,
gotta do what I have to do and
you're
like
doing, yeah.
create that space.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really like that, and I've resonated with it a lot. Especially the thing of where you talk about, if someone has a problem with you, the best thing you could do to like get back at them is just to be successful, right? To just like be so
Oh
great
yeah.
that like whatever they think of you is just it's irrelevant, right? Whether they publicly express it or whatever they do, it's like it's so insignificant in the grand scheme of things
Mm-hmm.
that yeah, they just shrink it to irrelevance. Really, that's what it is.
100%. And I'm not saying like definitely like stick up for yourself and say what you need to say when it needs to be said, of course. But like otherwise, I just don't let those things like stress me. It's kind of just like, keep your head in the game. Like I know in my mind, like I know and I see where I'm going and
Mhm.
how, like how big, or I know I can't even see how big, but I just know something bigger than me is like what's like destined for me. That like that's what I truly believe, and I believe like in the impact I'm trying to make and like the genuine nature of all that, and like that's kind of just like what matters. Just
At the end of the day, yeah.
not letting the outside noise get to me and just focus on that.
Nice, nice. I like that. I really like that a lot. All right. So my next question for you is, what does, okay, let me I guess give you some context of it, right? So I'm assuming that, at least you're a bit familiar with like the podcast, you've seen maybe some things here and there. So my question now is like, what does Alpha Delta mean to you? And like, how does it relate to you to some degree?
I'd say Alpha Delta for me is like I'd say it's like I could put it as the difference between like where you are and just like information, whether
Mm,
it's like information about yourself, information about like just educating yourself on like other maybe like, material thing, but I think more so just information about yourself. I think the
right.
difference sometimes with like I guess you'd say people who are operating at like a higher level is not necessarily in a matter of fact way where it's like they're at a higher level. It's just I think there's a higher awareness of self, or like
Mm,
people who've just like maybe taken a bit more time have this understanding of self. I don't think it's necessarily like an outstanding skill set. Like there's nothing new under the sun, and quite literally like except for like our minds, how we interpret information, like
yeah.
there's not much difference. Like there's not much difference. It's just how we interpret information and what we do with that information, how we interpret information about ourselves, our emotions, the things we do, the things we don't do, and like what we do with that information. So I guess it's just I'd say it's for me, Alpha Delta is just that, the difference between where you are and or what you know and what you don't know.
What you don't know,
Also
yeah,
about yourself.
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
pretty
No,
much. Mhm.
definitely. I really like that. And that's literally part of like the reason why I even started this thing, right? It's like, because,
Mhm.
for me, growing up, you always have like your role models, your idols, people you look up to. And it's usually like the guys who have all the money, all the fame, or in the, Forbes top 100, that kind of thing. You think
Mhm.
about the Bill Gates, the Steve Jobs, the Elon Musk types, right? But for me, I was always like, I can't really resonate. I don't really resonate with those guys at all, right? Like they are, yes, they're at a high level, absolutely, right. But in terms of like to what degree, it's almost that thing of like they're in a whole other league, right? A whole other stratosphere of levels to it. So I think for me, like why I even started is that I wanted to have, or at least because I was looking around, like I just people I knew in my network, and I was like, yo, there are actually a lot of people that I know that are doing pretty inspiring things, and their stories aren't really out there. And I'm sure if these more of these stories are out there, they could inspire other people. to, whether it is, wanting to get into media like yourself, right? They can like look at, probably listen to this podcast and be like, hey, they're doing something really inspiring in the media space. I'd really want to get into that space because I'm a creative. Perhaps I can follow their path to some degree, right? So really
Yeah.
that's where a lot of their inspiration came behind, just like creating the podcast and everything behind it as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. Actually, that's like a beautiful idea. Just like allowing people to see the in between, like like seeing
Exactly.
where, like, I guess maybe what like growth, success, or the journey looks like in between, not always at the highest level. So I think
Exactly.
that's a beautiful concept. Yeah.
Exactly. Awesome. Right. So we're pretty much coming towards the end of this conversation. The last question I have for you is, do you have any questions for me?
Any questions? Yeah, I guess for you, I'd say like what has been maybe like your biggest like lesson or like realization, I guess, while having so many conversations. I think like, having the setup or the design, like the podcast you have, and being able to like constantly have conversations with such like a wide range of people. Like, what would you say across the board is something that you have kind of identified also through your own experience about like just like what's the biggest like lesson across the board? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good question. Um, you mean in terms of like the common theme that I'm picking up from a lot of people I'm speaking with, or
Yeah, in
uh,
combination, I guess, with like the theme of your own journey as well. Like, what would you say is across the board? Like you've just seen time and time again, I guess.
yeah. I think definitely time and time again, the most common thing, if I was to pick a trait, right, with all the people that I've been like speaking with, is just a lot of just with everyone that I've been speaking with so far, they've always had a drive behind them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Say drive, ambition, or vision, like whatever word you could use. But the thing I'd always see very, very common, and also in myself, is that, desire to achieve, to strive, to be the best in whatever pursuit that they're going after, right? And it's funny that you actually asked this, because literally it's in the name, right? AlphaDelta. That's to give you background about how I came up with the name. I thought of alpha as like striving to be first, as striving to like be the best, this pursuit to be a leader in a sense in whatever field you're in. And delta is essentially change, right? So the idea behind AlphaDelta is that these are people who are constantly wanting to, improve and adapt, or just in order to become the best at whatever they're trying to pursue, right? So that has definitely been like, the most common thing is just I'm always picking up on this, for lack of a better word, like just the ambition, the drive, and like also a lot of people I speak with are very passionate about what they do. It's a very, very common thing as well. So yeah, so that's it.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's powerful. 100%.
Nice. Cool. So we're pretty much at the end of this conversation. Final remarks. Where can people find you, and is there anything that you'd like to plug on this episode?
Oh yeah, so you can find me across like pretty much all social media platforms. Mali Kaluve as like my personal account, and then my company Vinteve media, and the Vinteve is VINTEVE media. And definitely like check us out. You could also check out my podcast Mindful Mali, which is where I kind of actually go to like talk about some of the lessons I've learned and my mindset, and how I've built like kind of my mindset towards not just like professional life, but my personal life as well. And thank you so much, Joe. It's been like an amazing conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate you as well for coming on, just taking the time. Really enjoyed this conversation. This was like, I think it was a long time coming. So I'm glad we were able to like just kick off like this. For everyone
Mm-hmm.
watching, I'll add all the links to the ways to reach out and be in touch with her into this episode. And, I just want to thank you all for joining us in this episode. This has been an episode of AlphaDelta, a podcast where we have conversations with people operating at a higher level than most, with the hopes that it motivates and inspires people to become the best version of themselves. I've been your host, Joe Karaoke, and I'm joined here with my guest, Mali Kaluve. And it's going to be a goodbye from us, and we'll see you at the next one. Peace.
Thank you.